The wail of military police sirens cut through the Friday night air at Officers Club, like a blade through silk. 4 MPs burst through the entrance handcuffs, already drawn, their flashlights sweeping across the crowded bar, until they locked onto a single figure, standing motionless in the center of a tightening circle. "Rachel Porter, you're under arrest for impersonating a military officer and stolen valor under federal law." Captain Jake Morrison's voice boomed across the packed room, his face flushed red from a volatile mixture of alcohol and righteous fury. He pointed an accusing finger at the woman in civilian clothes who stood before him with unsettling calm. "This fraud walked in here wearing dog tags, claiming she served with SEALs. She's a fake." 40 officers and their families turned in unison. Phones lifted, recording lights blinked to life. The Friday evening crowd, which moments ago had been enjoying drinks and conversation after a long week, now pressed forward to witness what promised to be a spectacular fall from grace. Rachel Porter didn't struggle as MP Commander Captain Linda Vasquez approached with practiced authority. She simply stood there, brown eyes steady and unafraid, radiating a stillness that seemed almost inappropriate given the circumstances. Her hair was cut short, practical framing a face that showed no trace of panic. Jeans and a plain gray t-shirt marked her as civilian unremarkable, except for one detail, a thin silver chain around her neck, from which hung a small metallic object that caught the overhead lights. "You have the right to remain silent. I request to contact higher authority," Rachel said, her voice measured and cold as winter steel. "Naval Special Warfare Command, Major General Stephen Hayes." Morrison burst into laughter, a harsh sound that several of his companions echoed. "You think a general gives a care about some wannabe like you, lady? You just made the biggest mistake of your pathetic life." But on the challenge coin dangling from Rachel's necklace, a series of numbers etched into the metal glinted beneath the bar lights. GU7041 2011. And in the next 90 minutes, everyone in that room would come to understand they had just committed the gravest error of their careers. The Officers Club at Naval Base Coronado occupied a converted hangar that had been retrofitted with enough polish to make it respectable for formal gatherings, while retaining enough military functionality to remind everyone where they were. Long windows lined one wall, offering views of the Pacific Ocean, darkening under twilight. The bar stretched along the opposite side, bottles arranged with parade ground precision. Round tables filled the main floor, most occupied by personnel, unwinding after a demanding week of operations and training. In the adjacent function room, a memorial service had just concluded. Over 100 attendees were filtering back into the main area, their expressions somber, conversations muted. They had gathered to honor Petty Officer Marcus Webb, a SEAL who had survived 3 combat deployments only to lose his battle with PTSD last month. The weight of that loss hung in the air like smoke. Rachel had been sitting alone at a corner table near the windows when Morrison's group had first noticed her. She'd kept to herself, nursing a single glass of water, her posture unconsciously perfect, despite the casual setting. To the untrained eye, she was just another civilian, but Master Chief Tom Sullivan, a SEAL instructor with 22 years of service, had noticed something different from his position at the bar. Her stance, even while seated, maintained alignment that spoke of ingrained discipline. When someone passed too close behind her, she'd tracked their movement with peripheral awareness that went beyond normal caution. And when the bartender had dropped a glass, her head had turned toward the sound, with a speed that suggested threat assessment rather than simple startle reflex. Sullivan had been about to approach her when Morrison's group made their move. 3 SEAL operators, all in their late 20s to early 30s, fresh from a successful training evolution and riding high on accomplishment and beer. Captain Jake Morrison led the trio, his SEAL trident pin prominent on his khaki uniform. Lieutenant Brad Cortez flanked him on the left, phone already in hand. Petty Officer Dylan Ross completed the triangle, his expression skeptical but eager to follow Morrison's lead. "Excuse me, ma'am," Morrison had said, his tone carrying false politeness that barely masked condescension. "Couldn't help but notice your dog tags. What unit did you serve with?" Rachel had looked up at him with eyes that revealed nothing. "I attended a memorial service. I'm not looking for conversation." "That's not what I asked." Morrison pressed, stepping closer. "Those tags military issue, or did you buy them at a surplus store?" "They're mine." "So you're claiming military service?" Cortez chimed in, his phone, now raised and recording. "As what exactly?" I'm not claiming anything. I attended a service for a fallen operator. That's all you need to know. Ross leaned in, examining her with exaggerated scrutiny. Funny you don't look like any operator I've ever seen. What was your rate? Your command, your graduating class. That information isn't public, Rachel said quietly. Morrison laughed. That's convenient. Let me guess, your service is classified, super secret squirrel stuff we're not cleared to know about. The surrounding tables had started paying attention. Conversations died. Phones emerged from pockets. The energy in the room shifted from relaxed to predatory. You know what I think, Morrison continued, his voice rising to ensure everyone could hear. I think you're one of those stolen valor cases, someone who bought some gear online and wants to pretend they earned it. And you picked the wrong night and the wrong crowd to try that con. Rachel's jaw tightened almost imperceptibly. Her hands remained flat on the table, but Sullivan noticed her fingers shift position slightly, as if she were consciously forcing them to stay still rather than form into something else. I haven't misrepresented myself to anyone, she said. Then prove it. Ross pulled out his own phone. Give us your details. We'll verify them right now. Should take 2 minutes if you're legit. I'm not authorized to provide operational details without proper clearance verification, Cortez whooped. Operational details she's actually committing to the story. He panned his phone camera across the watching crowd. Everyone hearing this, we got ourselves a live one. Stolen valor in progress at Coronado Officers Club. Morrison grabbed Rachel's shoulder, spinning her to face him directly. The movement was aggressive, deliberately invasive. You think you can disrespect real operators, sit here in our house wearing our symbols and expect us to just let it slide? For just an instant, something flickered behind Rachel's eyes. A calculation. A threat assessment. Sullivan saw it from across the room and instinctively pushed away from the bar, recognizing a response pattern he'd witnessed countless times in actual combat veterans. But Rachel didn't move. She didn't strike. She didn't even pull away. She simply looked at Morrison with an expression so empty of fear that it was somehow more unsettling than aggression would have been. You should take your hand off me, she said quietly. Morrison squeezed harder. Or what you gonna call the cops? We are the cops here, lady. And you just confessed to impersonating. His words cut off as the dog tag chain around Rachel's neck snapped under the pressure of his grip. The tags scattered across the floor, metal clinking on polished wood. The challenge coin followed, bouncing once before settling near Morrison's boot. Rachel's hand moved to catch the falling objects, with reflexes that blurred. She snagged one dog tag mid-air, her fingers closing around it with a speed that made several observers blink in surprise. But the coin was already on the ground. Morrison bent to pick it up, his expression triumphant. Well, let's see what kind of souvenir you bought yourself. He held the coin up to the light, squinting at the markings. The metal was worn, clearly not new. One side bore an image he didn't recognize, a trident, but stylized differently than the standard seal trident. The reverse side showed a series of numbers and letters that meant nothing to him. GU704A1 2011. Morrison read aloud. What's this supposed to be? Some kind of serial number you made up. Rachel stood slowly, her movement controlled but inevitable. Give that back. I don't think so. This is evidence. Evidence that you're running a scam. Morrison pocketed the coin. And now we're calling the MPs. Let them sort out what charges to file. Bartender Joey Martinez, a former Navy corpsman who'd been watching the confrontation with growing concern, spoke up from behind the bar. Hey, Morrison, maybe ease up a little. Let her explain before you escalate this. Explain what? How she bought fake gear and thought she'd impress people. Morrison pulled out his own phone. I'm calling this in. Captain Vasquez is going to love this. As he made the call, Cortez continued filming, narrating for his viewers. This is what stolen valor looks like, people. Someone so desperate for respect, they'll steal the identity of warriors who actually earned it. Right here at Coronado, can you believe it? She picked literally the worst possible place to run this con. Ross circled Rachel like a predator, sizing up prey. You know what the penalty is for impersonating a military officer, federal crime. Prison time. Your life's about to get real complicated. Rachel didn't respond. She simply stood there, her posture unconsciously shifting into what Sullivan recognized as a modified parade rest feat, shoulder-width apart, hands loosely clasped behind her back, weight evenly distributed. It was the stance of someone who'd stood through countless inspections, briefings, and waiting periods. The stance of someone who'd worn a uniform for years. Sullivan pushed through the gathering crowd. "Gentlemen, maybe we should all take a breath here. Morrison, you've made your point. Let's wait for the MPs and let them handle it properly." Morrison rounded on him. "With respect, Master Chief, this doesn't concern you. We caught her red-handed. What exactly did you catch her doing, sitting quietly at a table? Wearing military identification she didn't earn? Did she tell you she was a SEAL?" Sullivan asked calmly. Morrison hesitated. "She implied it. She was wearing tags. Had a coin talked about attending an operator memorial. All of which could be true," Sullivan interrupted. "Did she specifically claim to be something she's not?" "She said her service record is classified," Ross interjected. "Classic faker move." Sullivan looked at Rachel, who met his gaze with that same unsettling calm. "Ma'am, prior service?" "Yes," Rachel said simply. "Branch, Navy." "Rate," Rachel paused. "I'm not authorized to discuss specifics without proper clearance verification, Master Chief." Morrison threw up his hands. "See, she's playing the classified card because she's got nothing to back it up." The door crashed open. Captain Linda Vasquez strode in with 4 MPs at her back, their weapons conspicuously holstered, but their body language broadcasting authority and readiness for trouble. Vasquez was known for running a tight ship and having zero tolerance for military misconduct. "Someone want to tell me why I'm here on a Friday night instead of home with my family?" Vasquez demanded, her gaze sweeping the room before settling on the knot of people around Rachel. Morrison stepped forward. "Captain, we've got a stolen valor situation. This woman," he gestured at Rachel, "has been representing herself as military, specifically claiming SEAL service. She's wearing dog tags and carrying military identification she didn't earn." Vasquez approached Rachel with the confident stride of someone accustomed to people getting out of her way. "Ma'am, I need to see identification, driver's license or military ID." Rachel reached into her pocket, slowly extracted a wallet, and handed over her driver's license. No military ID appeared. Vasquez examined the license under her flashlight. "Rachel Porter, civilian address in San Diego, no military designation. Yet, you're wearing dog tags." "I attended a memorial service for a fallen operator," Rachel said, her voice steady. "I made no claims to anyone about my status." "She absolutely did," Morrison cut in. "She talked about SEAL training, operational details." "I answered questions that were directed at me," Rachel corrected quietly. "I didn't volunteer information." Vasquez held up a hand for silence. "Ms. Porter, simple question, did you represent yourself as a currently serving or former military officer this evening?" "I attended a memorial service, period." "That's not an answer. Did you or did you not claim military service?" If you've ever been wrongly accused of something you couldn't defend yourself against, you know the unique frustration Rachel faced in that moment. Sometimes the truth is locked behind walls we can't break down, and the only option is to endure until someone with the right key arrives. If you appreciate stories where quiet strength ultimately triumphs over loud arrogance, where those who serve in silence receive the recognition they've truly earned, then you're in the right place. Subscribe now and join our community of over 2 million viewers who value authentic stories of underestimated heroes. Hit that notification bell so you never miss the moment when truth breaks through prejudice. Rachel met Vasquez's eyes. "I need to contact Naval Special Warfare Command. Major General Stephen Hayes. This is a matter requiring higher authority involvement." "You don't get to make demands, Ms. Porter. You're under investigation for federal violations. Now, answer the question, did you claim military service?" Before Rachel could respond, Morrison pulled out the challenge coin. She was carrying this captain. She claimed it was issued to her. But look at it. It's got weird markings, nothing official. Probably ordered it custom to complete her costume. Vasquez took the coin, turning it over in her hands. She frowned at the numbers, but didn't seem to recognize their significance. "Challenge coins can be purchased online or received as gifts. This isn't proof of service." "Exactly," Cortez chimed in. "She's trying to use fake memorabilia to steal valor from real operators." Lieutenant Colonel James Wu, a Marine liaison officer, pushed through the crowd. He'd been observing from a nearby table, his weathered face thoughtful. "Captain Vasquez, may I examine that coin. Vasquez handed it over. Wu studied the markings carefully, his expression shifting subtly. Ms. Porter, where did you acquire this? It was issued to me in May 2011 for completion of a classified operation, Rachel said. Morrison exploded. She's making it up as she goes. Captain, arrest her already. But Wu wasn't looking at Morrison. He was looking at Rachel with the kind of assessment that comes from decades of reading people under pressure. Ma'am, you're claiming this coin represents completion of a classified operation. I'm stating a fact, sir. Then you understand why I'm going to verify that claim before anyone makes arrests. Wu pulled out his phone, stepping away from the crowd. Vasquez's jaw tightened. Colonel, with respect, we have sufficient probable cause. Ms. Porter has failed to provide documentation of service. She's carrying items that appear to be military memorabilia, and multiple witnesses heard her make claims about military experience. What specific claims? Sergeant First Class Mike Torres asked, arriving from the memorial service next door. The Army Ranger had a reputation for fairness and zero tolerance for false accusations. Morrison, what exactly did she say? She talked about SEAL training. She knew details about what details. Torres pressed. About Bud S training, which are publicly available online. Torres interrupted. What did she claim that actually constitutes impersonation? Morrison's face reddened. She implied she was one of us. Walking around with gear talking about operations. Implied is not the same as claimed, Torres said firmly. Did she introduce herself as an active SEAL? Did she tell anyone she was currently serving? Silence. She wore dog tags, Ross insisted. Which could be from a family member, Torres countered. Which could be legitimately hers from past service. Which could be completely legal even if they're just personal items. You're making assumptions. Vasquez raised her voice. Gentlemen enough. Ms. Porter, final opportunity. Do you have any documentation of military service discharge papers, DD-2 fort? Anything. Rachel's expression didn't change. My service record is classified under executive order. I cannot produce public documentation without authorization from Naval Special Warfare Command. Cortez burst into laughter. Oh, that's perfect. She's committed now. Captain, this is textbook fake veteran behavior. They always claim their records are sealed or classified when you ask for proof. Vasquez seemed to agree. Her expression hardened. Ms. Porter, people with genuinely classified backgrounds don't announce it in public bars. They don't wear identification items that draw attention. And they certainly don't claim they can't provide basic verification. I made no announcements, Rachel said quietly. I attended a private memorial service. These gentlemen approached me, made accusations, and escalated the situation. I've answered your questions within the bounds of my security obligations. If that's insufficient contact, the appropriate authority to verify my status. The appropriate authority is me, Vasquez snapped. And my authority says you're under arrest. She nodded to her MPs. Cuff her. As the MPs moved forward, Rachel didn't resist. She turned, placing her hands behind her back with practiced ease. The MPs hesitated for just a fraction of a second. Her positioning was too perfect, too automatic. She'd been handcuffed before multiple times by people who knew what they were doing. Sullivan noticed. So did Torres. They exchanged glances. Rachel Porter, Vasquez announced loudly enough for the entire room to hear. You're under arrest for violation of Federal Code 18 U.S.C. Section 912, impersonating a military officer. You have the right to remain silent. Anything you say can and will be used against you in a court of law. You have the right to an attorney. I understand my rights, Rachel said. I repeat my request to contact Major General Stephen Hayes at Naval Special Warfare Command. This arrest is a mistake that will be corrected once proper verification is completed. Morrison laughed harshly. She's still trying to name-drop Captain? This is beautiful. We caught a faker, and she's digging herself deeper with every word. The MPs led Rachel toward the door. The crowd parted, phones held high, everyone wanting to capture the moment. Cortez provided running commentary for his live stream. And there she goes, folks, stolen valor perpetrator getting what she deserves. This is why we stay vigilant. These frauds think they can disrespect our service, but the truth always comes out. As Rachel passed the bar, Joey Martinez caught her eye. The former corpsman looked troubled, his instincts clearly warning him that something was wrong with this picture. But he said nothing. What could he say? Sullivan watched her go, his decades of experience screaming that they were making a catastrophic mistake. But he had no evidence, no reason beyond intuition. So he stayed silent too, though it cost him. Only Mrs. Eleanor Grant, a Gold Star mother who'd been at the memorial service, spoke up as Rachel was led past. "Young lady," she called out softly, "thank you for attending Marcus's service. It meant a great deal." Rachel's step faltered almost imperceptibly. She looked at the elderly woman, and for just a moment, her controlled expression cracked to reveal something raw underneath. "He was a good operator, ma'am. I'm sorry for your loss." Morrison grabbed Rachel's arm roughly. "Enough with the act. Let's go." And they took her out into the night, still handcuffed, still silent, still carrying whatever secrets lay behind those steady brown eyes. The crowd slowly dispersed back to their tables, the excitement fading into animated conversation and speculation. Morrison bought a round for his friends celebrating their righteous bust. Cortez posted his video with hashtags about stolen valor and justice. Ross started composing an official statement for the investigation. None of them noticed Sullivan making a quiet phone call from the corner. None of them saw Torres texting someone with a simple message: "We have a situation at O Club. Need higher authority ASAP." And none of them understood that the challenge coin sitting in Morrison's pocket, the one with those strange numbers and markings, was about to transform from evidence of fraud into proof of their own catastrophic error in judgment. Because while they celebrated in the bar, Rachel was being led into an MP office where Commander Richard Stokes, the base JAG officer, was waiting to conduct an official interrogation. And in 45 minutes, Stokes would ask her a question about weapons systems that no civilian should be able to answer. And Rachel, tired of the charade and bound by regulations that required her to answer direct questions from military legal authority, honestly would provide an answer so technically precise that it would stop everyone in the room cold. But that moment hadn't arrived yet. For now, she sat in a hard metal chair in a windowless office, hands cuffed behind her back, waiting with the infinite patience of someone who'd waded through far worse situations in far more dangerous places. Waiting for the truth to catch up with the accusations. Waiting for someone with the right clearance to ask the right questions. Waiting as she'd learned to do years ago for the moment when silence would finally be allowed to speak. The MP office was exactly what Rachel expected: utilitarian furniture, fluorescent lighting that turned everyone's skin sallow, and the lingering smell of stale coffee mixed with industrial cleaner. A metal desk dominated the center of the room, flanked by chairs that were deliberately uncomfortable. The walls displayed motivational posters about integrity and justice, oblivious to the irony of their presence during false accusations. Commander Richard Stokes entered 10 minutes after Rachel was seated. At 45, he carried himself with the precise confidence of a lawyer who'd built his career on military regulations and legal minutiae. His uniform was immaculate, his posture impeccable, his expression conveying the weary superiority of someone dealing with yet another case of civilian misconduct. Vasquez and Morrison followed him in, along with Torres, who'd invited himself as a neutral observer. The small room suddenly felt crowded. "Ms. Porter." Stokes began settling into the chair across from her. "I'm Commander Stokes, JAG Corps. I'll be conducting the preliminary investigation into the charges against you. I want to make something clear from the start. If you cooperate fully and honestly, things will go easier for you. Stolen valor is a serious federal crime, but first-time offenders who show remorse often receive reduced sentences." Rachel said nothing. "Let's start with basics." Stokes continued, pulling out a yellow legal pad. Full name: Rachel Ann Porter. Date of birth: November 15th, 1989. Current occupation: emergency medical technician with San Diego County. Stokes made notes. "And you claim prior military service." "I served in the United States Navy. Honorably discharged October 2013. Morrison, leaning against the wall, couldn't contain himself. "Here we go. Let's hear the details of this alleged service." Stokes shot him a warning glance. "Lieutenant, I'm conducting this interview. You'll have your chance." He returned his attention to Rachel. "Ms. Porter, what was your rate in the Navy?" Rachel paused for exactly 3 seconds. "I'm not authorized to disclose my specific rate or unit designation without proper clearance verification from Naval Special Warfare Command." "There it is," Morrison exclaimed. The classic deflection, "Sir, this is exactly what stolen valor perpetrators do. They claim classified service because they can't provide details that don't exist." Stokes held up a hand. "Ms. Porter, I have a secret clearance. If your service was genuinely classified at that level, you can disclose it to me. My service requires higher than secret clearance, Commander." The room fell silent for a moment. Stokes's pen stopped moving. Even Morrison looked uncertain. Torres spoke up quietly. "Commander, that would be top secret SCI or specialized compartmented programs. If she's telling the truth, if," Morrison interrupted, "big if." Stokes tapped his pen against the pad. "Fine, let's approach this differently. Ms. Porter, tell me about Bud S training, assuming you're claiming to have gone through it." "I haven't claimed anything about Bud S," Rachel said, "but you know what it is. Basic underwater demolition SEAL training conducted at Naval Special Warfare Center Coronado." "Common knowledge," Morrison muttered. "Google could tell you that." Stokes continued. "What week of Bud S is Hell Week? Week 4 of first phase. What's the grinder used for physical training evolutions? Surf torture log PT conditioning drills. Asphalt surface approximately 150 feet by 200 feet. Stokes's eyebrows rose slightly. That level of specificity wasn't typical tourist knowledge. "What happens during surf torture?" Rachel hesitated. This was crossing into territory that could either condemn or vindicate her. "Students form boat crews in the surf zone. They're required to link arms and remain in the cold water for extended periods. The purpose is to test psychological endurance and teamwork under physically demanding conditions. How long are the periods? That varies by instructor decision and student performance. It's not standardized. What's the water temperature? Typically between 55 and 65 degrees Fahrenheit, depending on season." Stokes made notes, his expression thoughtful. Morrison looked less confident now, but unwilling to back down. "She could have read all this in memoirs or watched documentaries." "Could have," Torres agreed. "But she's not wrong about any of it. And her answers aren't rehearsed. She's not reciting from memory, she's pulling from experience." "Your opinion," Morrison snapped. Stokes moved to more technical material. "Ms. Porter, what weapons platforms are standard for SEAL assault elements?" This was the line. Rachel knew it. Answer truthfully and reveal knowledge that shouldn't be public. Refuse and confirm their suspicions of fraud. The regulations were clear. Direct questions from military legal authority regarding potential criminal activity required honest responses. She made her choice. Standard loadout for DevGru assault elements typically includes modified HK-416 with 10.4-inch barrel suppressor, EO-Tech, EXPS-3 optic visible, and infrared laser aiming devices. "Stop!" Stokes's voice was sharp. The pen dropped from his hand. "Where did you get that information?" Rachel fell silent. Morrison pushed off the wall. "Where did you get it?" "That's not public information." "No," Stokes said quietly, his expression shifting from skeptical to deeply troubled. "It's not. That's operational details that should not be in civilian hands." He stared at Rachel. "Ms. Porter, you just revealed classified information. How do you know those specifications?" "I was asked a direct question by legal authority," Rachel said calmly. "I'm required to answer honestly." "That doesn't explain how you know classified weapons configurations." "It does if I had access to them through legitimate service." The room erupted. Morrison demanded immediate arrest for espionage. Vasquez wanted to know who Rachel's contacts were. Torres argued that her knowledge proved she had insider access somehow. Only Stokes remained silent, studying Rachel with the intensity of someone reassessing everything. Finally, he raised his hand for quiet. "Ms. Porter, I'm going to ask you one direct question, and I want a direct answer. Not deflection, not claims of classified status, not evasion. Were you, or were you not, a member of the United States Naval Special Warfare Community?" Rachel met his eyes. "I was." "In what capacity?" "That information requires top-secret SCI clearance and compartmented access that I cannot verify you possess, Commander. I'm the JAG officer for this base. I have oversight authority." "You have authority," Rachel acknowledged, "but you may not have need-to-know clearance for specific programs. My participation in those programs cannot be disclosed without verification that you're authorized to receive that information." Stokes stood abruptly, his chair scraping across the floor. "This is absurd. You can't claim military service and then refuse to provide any verifiable details. I've provided details. You're now aware I had access to classified weapon specifications. That access wasn't illegitimate. I didn't steal information or hack databases. I knew those details because I used those weapon systems. Morrison's face had gone red. You're claiming you were an operator, a woman. In what, 2010, 2011? There were no female SEAL operators then. Officially, Rachel said quietly, there weren't. The word hung in the air like smoke from a discharged weapon. Vasquez stepped forward. Ms. Porter, let me see your hands. Rachel looked at her. Why? Just do it. Rachel held out her hands still cuffed. Vasquez grabbed her wrists, turning her palms up to the light. Her thumbs ran over the calluses' thick ridges at the base of each finger, pronounced scarring between the thumb and index finger of her right hand, smaller scars across the palm. Commander, Vasquez said slowly, these aren't normal calluses. This is weapon wear. Significant weapon wear. Torres moved closer to examine Rachel's hands. His expression shifted. That's pistol grip pattern, thousands of rounds, and this scarring that's slide bite from improper grip on a 1911 or similar platform. She learned to shoot with something that bites back when you hold it wrong. Anyone can go to shooting ranges, Morrison insisted, but his voice had lost its confident edge. Not like this, Torres countered. This is duty weapon wear. This is what happens when you carry and fire a service weapon daily for years. Recreational shooters don't develop this pattern. Stokes examined the hands as well, his legal mind clearly working through implications. Ms. Porter, remove your jacket. I'd prefer not to. It wasn't a request. You're under arrest. Remove your jacket or I'll have the MPs do it. Rachel slowly pulled off her light denim jacket, revealing a short-sleeved gray shirt underneath. Her forearms showed immediately a series of thin scars running up her left arm in a pattern that made Torres draw in a sharp breath. Shrapnel, he said. That's a blast pattern, IED or explosive device fragment wounds. He pointed to her shoulder. And that's scarring surgical. Something required significant medical intervention. Rachel's jaw tightened, but she said nothing. Vasquez studied the scars with professional interest. These aren't fresh, years old. Healed cleanly, which means good medical care. Military medical care. Could be from anything, Morrison argued, but he sounded uncertain now. Car accident, industrial accident. With shrapnel pattern. Torres shook his head. That's combat injury signature. I've seen it enough times to recognize it. Stokes returned to his chair, his entire approach shifting. Ms. Porter, I'm going to run your name through the military database. Standard check. If you served, you'll appear. If you don't appear, we'll have our answer. He pulled out a laptop logged into a secure terminal and began typing. Rachel watched him passively as he worked. Morrison moved to look over his shoulder. Torres remained by her side, his expression thoughtful. Vasquez stood by the door, arms crossed. After 5 minutes, Stokes looked up. No record of Rachel Porter in the SEAL pipeline, Bud S. graduates, or NS Dow's community databases that I can access. Morrison's triumphant expression returned. There it is. She's a fraud. All this talk about classified service, and she's not even in the system. She's not in the databases you can access, Torres corrected. That's different from not being in any database. What databases can't a JAG commander access? Morrison challenged. Quite a few, actually, Torres said. JSOC personnel, special mission units, compartmented programs. If she was part of something above your clearance, Commander, she wouldn't appear in your search. Stokes closed the laptop with more force than necessary. Ms. Porter, I'm going to be direct. You've demonstrated knowledge you shouldn't have injuries consistent with combat service and physical evidence of weapons training. But you're not in any database I can verify. That means either you're telling the truth about classified service above my clearance level, or you've stolen information and fabricated an elaborate cover story. I've told you the truth, Rachel said simply. Then provide me with someone who can verify it. A commanding officer, a unit member, someone I can contact to confirm your claims. Major General Stephen Hayes, Commanding General Naval Special Warfare Command. Morrison laughed bitterly. She's still trying to name drop, sir. This is getting ridiculous. She's claiming she can only be verified by a 3-star admiral, the commanding general of the entire SEAL community. That would be my last CO, Rachel said quietly. You expect us to believe you reported to a vice admiral? Vasquez asked incredulously. I don't expect anything, Captain. I'm stating fact. Stokes rubbed his temples. Ms. Porter, if you truly reported to General Hayes, he would have records, documentation, something to verify your claims. He does. Then why isn't it in the standard databases? Because it's not standard service. The circular argument was interrupted by a knock on the door. One of the MPs stuck his head in. Commander, there's an NCIS agent here. Says she needs to be involved in this case. Moments later, Special Agent Dana Frost entered. At 36, she carried the quiet authority of someone who'd investigated everything from petty theft to treason. Her expression was professionally neutral as she surveyed the room. Commander Stokes, I'm Special Agent Frost, NCIS. I understand you're investigating a stolen valor case. Alleged stolen valor, Torres corrected. Frost glanced at him, then at Rachel, then at the challenge coin, now sitting on Stokes' desk. She picked it up, turning it over slowly. Her expression didn't change, but something in her posture shifted. Where did you get this? She asked Rachel. It was issued to me in May 2011. For what operation? Operation 041. Frost's fingers tightened almost imperceptibly around the coin. Commander Hodges, I need everyone except essential personnel out of this room. Now, Morrison protested. I'm the one who identified the fraud. I have a right to. You have no rights in an NCIS investigation, Lieutenant, Frost said flatly. Out. That includes you, Captain Vasquez. Agent Frost, this is my arrest. Was your arrest. NCIS has jurisdiction over federal crimes involving military personnel. I'm assuming control of this investigation. Please exit. Vasquez's jaw worked, but she nodded and left. Morrison followed reluctantly, throwing a venomous glance at Rachel as he passed. At the only Stokes and Torres remained along with Frost and Rachel. Frost pulled out her own laptop, logging into what appeared to be a much more sophisticated system than Stokes had access to. She typed Rachel's information rapidly, her expression focused. The silence stretched for 5 minutes, then 10. Finally, she closed the laptop and looked at Stokes. Commander, how much do you know about Naval Special Warfare Group 7? There is no Group 7, Stokes said, automatically. NES Dalu is organized into Groups 1, 2, 3, 4, 8, and 10. Correct, there is no Group 7, officially. Frost turned to Rachel. But there was a unit with that designation. Wasn't there, Ms. Porter? Rachel's expression remained neutral, but Torres saw her shoulders tense almost imperceptibly. I cannot confirm or deny the existence of classified units, Rachel said carefully. No, you can't, Frost agreed. But I can because I have the clearance. She looked at Stokes. Commander Ms. Porter is telling the truth. Her service record is classified at levels above your access. The challenge coin is authentic, and you're about to make this situation significantly worse if you continue this arrest. Stokes stared at her. You're saying she was actually... I'm saying you need to release her immediately and contact Major General Hayes before this becomes an incident that ends careers, starting with yours. Morrison's shoulder check as he'd passed Rachel on his way out had been deliberate, a final act of contempt from someone convinced he'd exposed a fraud. The collision sent Rachel stumbling against the desk edge, and her shirt sleeve caught on a protruding corner of metal. The fabric tore with a soft ripping sound and exposed her shoulder. The tattoo was impossible to miss. A Navy SEAL trident rendered in sharp black lines with exceptional detail, but it wasn't standard. Below the trident were letters GU7, and surrounding those letters, 12 five-pointed stars arranged in a precise circle. 3 seconds of absolute silence. Then Chief Warrant Officer Alex Brennan, who'd just arrived and been standing outside the interview room, saw it through the open door. Oh my God. Torres's eyes went wide. Is that... Frost closed her laptop with a snap. Everyone stop moving. Joey Martinez, the bartender, had followed the group from the club and was watching through the hallway window. His face went pale. That's a ghost unit designation. He breathed. Master Chief Sullivan, arriving from making phone calls, pushed past Martinez and saw the tattoo. His entire body went rigid. Then slowly and deliberately, he came to attention. Ma'am, he said, his voice thick with emotion. That is not something to take lightly. Rachel pulled her shirt back over her shoulder, but the damage was done. Everyone had seen it. The door at the end of the hallway banged open, footsteps multiple sets moving with purpose. And then a voice sharp with authority and aged with command. "Where is she?" Major General Stephen Hayes entered the MP station in his dress uniform, every ribbon and medal in perfect placement, his weathered face set in an expression of barely controlled fury. At 58, he moved with the efficiency of someone half his age, decades of special operations service evident in every step. Behind him came Commander Bill Hodges, the base commander looking deeply uncomfortable. And behind Hodges came Lieutenant Colonel Wu, who'd made the phone call that brought Hayes here. The hallway erupted in activity. Everyone who could stand came to attention. Stokes shot out of his chair. Vasquez and Morrison, who'd been waiting in the outer office, scrambled to their feet. Even Rachel, handcuffs still on, began to rise. Hayes's eyes swept the scene, taking in everything: the torn shirt, the visible tattoo, the handcuffs, the challenge coin on Stokes's desk. His jaw tightened. Then he looked at Rachel, really looked at her, and his expression shifted through a dozen emotions in 2 seconds: shock, recognition, something that might have been pain relief, and finally settling into grim determination. "Operator Porter," he said quietly. The room erupted into chaos. Morrison's face drained of all color. Cortez, who'd followed the crowd, dropped his phone. Ross staggered backward into a wall. Vasquez's hands shook as she fumbled for her handcuff keys. Stokes simply sat down, all the strength leaving his legs. "No," Morrison whispered. "No, that's not. She can't be." Hayes ignored them all. He walked directly to Rachel, and in a movement that would be analyzed and replayed countless times. In the coming days, he came to attention and saluted her. "Ma'am," he said formally, "it's an honor." Rachel, still handcuffed, couldn't return the salute. But she met his eyes with an expression that, finally after 90 minutes of forced calm, showed emotion. Gratitude, relief, and something that might have been tears held firmly in check. "General," she said, her voice slightly hoarse, "permission to speak freely." "Granted. It's good to see you, sir." Hayes's composure cracked just slightly. "The honor is mine, Rachel. Always has been." He turned to Vasquez. "Get those handcuffs off her. Now." Vasquez's hands were shaking so badly she could barely work the key. When the cuffs finally came off, Rachel rubbed her wrists absently, the action automatic and unconscious. Hayes turned to address the room, his voice carrying the weight of 3 decades of command. "For those present with appropriate clearance, I'm about to provide information that does not leave this room. For those without clearance," he looked pointedly at Morrison, "consider this an official briefing under national security protocols. Any disclosure will be prosecuted." He picked up the challenge coin from Stokes's desk, holding it up so everyone could see. This coin was issued to 12 individuals who participated in the most classified naval special warfare operations conducted between 2009 and 2013. These individuals operated under a unit designation that officially does not exist and has never existed. They conducted missions in denied territories where U.S. military presence could not be acknowledged, and they did so with a success rate and casualty ratio that remains unmatched. Hayes's voice softened slightly. "Petty Officer First Class Rachel Porter served in that unit from 2009 to 2013. She was an explosive breacher and combat medic. She participated in 17 classified operations across 4 theaters." He paused, looking at Rachel. "Including Operation Neptune Spear, May 2nd, 2011. Someone in the hallway gasped. "Bin Laden raid. She was at the Bin Laden raid." Morrison's voice came out broken, barely audible. "But there were no women on that mission." Hayes's eyes were steel. "Officially, Lieutenant, there were no women. Operator Porter's presence remains classified under executive order, as does the presence of her unit." He set the coin down carefully. These coins were issued to the 12 Ghost Unit 7 operators who survived operations from 2009 to 2013. 4 operators did not survive. The 8 who did carry these coins is the only acknowledgement of service that most of them will ever receive. He turned back to Rachel. "Operator Porter earned hers the way all of them did, through actions most of the world will never know about, in places they'll never hear, of protecting people who will never know they were in danger." Brennan, the SEAL Team 6 liaison, stepped forward. His eyes were wet. "Ma'am, We heard you were medically retired. Injuries from Kandahar. Rachel nodded slowly. IED ambush during exfil August 2012. Shrapnel collapsed my left lung, severed my radial artery, fractured my shoulder blade in 3 places. Hayes continued the story. Operator Porter rendered aid to 3 teammates while under fire despite her injuries. She kept 2 men alive until medevac arrived. She saved Petty Officer Marcus Webb that day. His voice roughened. Webb survived his physical wounds, his psychological ones. Those took him last month. The memorial service. That's why Rachel had been there. Webb was her teammate, Hayes said. One of the men she saved, and she attended his service quietly, privately, because that's what operators like her do. They don't seek recognition. They don't tell stories. They certainly don't announce their service to strangers in bars. He turned to face Morrison directly. The younger officer looked like he wanted to disappear into the floor. Lieutenant Morrison. Hayes said, his voice dangerously quiet. You just publicly accused, arrested, and assaulted a decorated combat veteran with higher security clearance than anyone in this building except me. You humiliated her in front of dozens of witnesses. You live-streamed accusations of fraud against a woman who has done more for this country in 4 years than most will do in entire careers. And you did all of this based on assumptions, prejudice, and the arrogant certainty that you knew better than she did about who belongs in the special operations community. Morrison couldn't speak. He was shaking, his face ashen. Hayes's voice rose slightly. You have 5 seconds to apologize to Operator Porter before I convene a court-martial board and end your career in the most public and humiliating way possible. I'm sorry, Morrison choked out. Ma'am, I'm so sorry. I didn't know. No, Rachel said quietly. You didn't. And you didn't try to find out. You made assumptions based on what you thought you knew about who could be an operator. And those assumptions were wrong. Hayes stepped back, giving Rachel space. She faced Morris and Cortez and Ross, the 3 men who'd orchestrated her arrest, with an expression that was somehow both understanding and implacable. I don't need your apologies, she continued. But the next woman you encounter who claims military service, she might. You owe it to every female operator, every female veteran, every woman who's earned her place through sacrifice and service to give them the respect you'd give any brother in arms. Not because they're women, because they're warriors. The silence that followed was profound. Finally, Hayes spoke again. Captain Vasquez, you're relieved of MP command pending review. Lieutenant Morrison, Lieutenant Cortez, Petty Officer Ross. You're all suspended from active duty, effective immediately. Commander Stokes, you'll face an administrative review for failure to verify claims before pursuing federal charges. Commander Hodges, he looked at the base commander. We need to discuss new protocols to ensure this never happens again. One by one, they acknowledged their fates. Vasquez removed her rank insignia and placed it on the nearest desk. Morrison couldn't look up from the floor. Stokes nodded numbly. Hayes turned to Rachel one final time. Operator Porter, on behalf of Naval Special Warfare Command, I apologize for this treatment. This should never have happened to you. It will not happen again. Rachel met his eyes. It wasn't your fault, sir. It was my community, my responsibility. He paused. I'd like to offer you a position, SEAL Training Advisory Board, mentoring female candidates, your choice of official or unofficial capacity. Rachel looked past him out the window to where the night sky was beginning to show hints of dawn. I need time to think about it, General. Take all the time you need. As the room began to clear, people processing what they had witnessed, Sullivan approached Rachel. Ma'am, can I ask the others from Ghost Unit 7? Are they? 4 didn't make it home, Rachel said quietly. 3 retired like me. 2 are still active, different units. The memorial service tonight. Webb was your teammate. He was the best of us. He survived Kandahar because I did my job. But PTSD doesn't leave scars you can see. Last month it finally took him. He held on for 12 years, but... She trailed off. Mrs. Eleanor Grant, who'd been waiting in the hallway, stepped forward. Her weathered face was wet with tears. My son served under your protection in 2011. I never knew your name until tonight. But I knew someone kept him alive when everything went wrong. Thank you. Thank you for bringing him home. Rachel embraced the elderly woman gently. He was a good operator. I'm sorry for your loss. And I'm sorry for yours. All of yours. Mrs. Grant pulled back, searching Rachel's face. You carry so much weight. Please let people help you bear it. Torres, still standing nearby, spoke quietly. Ma'am, you saved lives most people will never know about. That's the hardest kind of service. The kind that gets no recognition, no acknowledgement, no thanks. It's the only kind worth doing, Rachel said simply. The words hung in the air, a final statement on service sacrifice and the silent warriors who operate in shadows so others can live in light. Hayes checked his watch. It's 0400. Rachel, you're coming with me. We're getting you properly checked out medically, then getting you somewhere you can rest. Everyone else, this incident is classified. Nothing that happened tonight gets discussed outside proper channels. Am I clear? A chorus of yes, sir, echoed through the room. As Hayes led Rachel toward the exit, Morrison found his voice one last time. Ma'am, I know I have no right to ask, but why didn't you tell us? Why did you let us arrest you when you could have stopped at any time? Rachel paused, looking back at him. Could I? At what cost? Breaking federal law to save my ego? Revealing classified information to win an argument? She shook her head. I took an oath, Lieutenant. That oath didn't have an exception for personal convenience or public embarrassment. Some things are more important than being right. Service is one of them. And with that, she walked out into the early morning, free for the first time in hours, heading toward whatever came next. Behind her, the officers' club began the slow process of understanding what had just happened. Videos would be deleted, statements would be revised, careers would be examined, and in some cases, ended. But one thing was certain, no one present that night would ever forget the quiet woman who'd endured their accusations with grace, who'd carried secrets heavier than most would ever know, and who'd proven that sometimes the strongest warriors are the ones nobody expects. The drive to Naval Medical Center San Diego took 20 minutes through pre-dawn streets empty except for delivery trucks and die-hard joggers. Hayes drove his own vehicle, a nondescript black SUV that screamed, government issue, despite lacking any official markings. Rachel sat in the passenger seat, watching the city lights blur past her mind, still processing the past 2 hours. You know, Hayes said after several minutes of silence, when Wu called me, I was at a retirement dinner for Admiral Patterson. Had to leave before dessert. Patterson's wife was not pleased. Rachel glanced at him. Sorry to ruin your evening, sir. Don't be. Patterson's retirement speeches are legendary for all the wrong reasons. You gave me an excellent excuse. He navigated a turn with practiced ease. What I want to know is how you ended up at that club in the first place. You've been ghost for 12 years. Why surface now? Webb's memorial service, Rachel said quietly. His sister reached out, asked if any of his old teammates could attend. Most of the unit is still active or unreachable. I was the only one available. You could have declined. I could have. But Webb saved my life in Hellman Province in 2010. I owed him more than silence. She leaned her head against the window. I didn't plan on staying for the reception, but his mother asked me to. Said Marcus had talked about a female medic who'd patched him up during a firefight. She wanted to meet me. So you stayed, and Morrison's group was there. They were already drunk when I arrived. I kept to myself, tried to be invisible. Didn't work. Hayes' jaw tightened. Morrison's been on my radar for 6 months. Excellent operator, top-tier skills. But he's got attitude problems about the female integration program. I've been watching him, waiting for him to either evolve or self-destruct. Tonight, he made his choice. He's young, Rachel said. He'll learn. He's old enough to know better, and young enough that this will define his career going forward. Hayes pulled into the medical center parking lot, finding a spot near the emergency entrance. But that's not your problem anymore. Right now we're making sure you're physically okay, then we're dealing with the fallout. The medical examination was thorough, and to Rachel's relief, brief. The attending physician, a Navy lieutenant commander who'd clearly been briefed on the situation, checked her wrists for cuff injuries, examined the old scars for any aggravation from the evening's stress, and took baseline vitals. Everything came back normal, though her blood pressure was elevated. Stress response, the doctor noted. Understandable given the circumstances. I'm recommending 48 hours of rest light duty only, no strenuous activity. I work as an EMT, Rachel said. I'm scheduled for a shift tomorrow night. Call in, doctor's orders. He signed off on the paperwork and handed it to Hayes. General, she's clear to go, but seriously rest. The body keeps the score, and tonight's events will catch up with her if she doesn't give herself time to decompress. Hayes thanked him and led Rachel back to the SUV. I'm taking you to a safe house. Quiet location, secure, no interruptions. You'll stay there until we sort out the administrative mess. I have an apartment, which Morrison has the address to, along with 50 other people who watched his live stream. NCIS is already monitoring social media. Your face is out there, Rachel. The stolen valor accusation went viral before we could stop it. Now we're doing damage control, but until we can guarantee your safety, you're going somewhere secure. Rachel closed her eyes. Of course. The video. She'd known Cortez was streaming, but in the chaos, she hadn't thought about the implications. Thousands of people had watched her arrest, heard the accusations, formed opinions. And now, Hayes would have to somehow explain why the woman arrested for stolen valor was actually a legitimate operator without revealing classified information. How are you going to handle the media? She asked. Carefully, very carefully. Hayes started the engine. Public Affairs is already drafting a statement. It'll confirm you're a former Navy service member, that the charges were dropped due to verification of legitimate service, and that the matter is considered closed. We won't mention Ghost Unit 7 Operation Neptune Spear or any specifics. Just enough to clear your name without compromising operational security. Morrison's video shows my face. People will dig. Let them dig. They won't find anything. Your service record is sealed tighter than Fort Knox. We've already scrubbed your name from every accessible database. As far as the public is concerned, you're a former Navy service member who got caught up in a misunderstanding. End of story. Rachel wasn't convinced it would be that simple, but she was too exhausted to argue. The adrenaline that had sustained her through the interrogation was fading, leaving behind bone-deep fatigue and the beginnings of a headache. The safe house turned out to be a modest two-bedroom cottage in La Jolla, tucked into a quiet neighborhood with ocean views and nosy neighbors who'd notice anyone suspicious. Hayes entered first, clearing the rooms with practiced efficiency before gesturing Rachel inside. Fully stocked kitchen, secure communications in the den, panic button by the bed. NCIS will have rotating surveillance on the perimeter, but they'll be invisible. You won't see them unless something goes wrong. Rachel surveyed the space. Clean, comfortable, anonymous. How long do I need to stay here? 72 hours minimum. By then, the media cycle will have moved on, and we'll have a better picture of any threats. Hayes set his keys on the counter. Get some sleep. I'll be back this afternoon to brief you on the administrative proceedings. What's happening to Morrison and the others? Morrison, Cortez, and Ross are suspended pending formal investigation. They'll face disciplinary boards within the next 2 weeks. Vasquez has already submitted her resignation. She knows her career is over. Stokes is being reviewed by the JAG Ethics Committee. Commander Hodges is implementing new protocols to prevent similar incidents. Hayes met her eyes. They're facing consequences, Rachel. Real ones. I don't want to ruin their careers. You didn't ruin anything. They made choices. Now they're dealing with the results. He moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, you handled tonight with more grace than I would have. Most people would have revealed classified information just to prove the accusers wrong. You didn't. That's why you were Ghost Unit 7. That's why you're still one of the finest operators I've ever known. After he left, Rachel stood in the silent cottage for several minutes, processing. Then she walked to the bedroom, lay down fully clothed on top of the covers, and stared at the ceiling. Sleep didn't come easily. Her mind replayed the evening in fragments Morrison's face when Hayes confirmed her identity. Vasquez's shaking hands removing the handcuffs, Mrs. Grant's embrace Webb's memorial program, with his photo showing that crooked smile she remembered from Kandahar. Webb. God, she missed him. Missed all of them. The 4 who didn't come home. Petty Officer Lisa Chen, blown apart by an IED in Fallujah. Chief Petty Officer David Rodriguez, killed by sniper fire in Yemen. Lieutenant Marcus Hall, drowned during a water insertion, gone wrong off the coast of Somalia. And Petty Officer 3rd Class James Mitchell, who'd taken a bullet meant for Rachel in Pakistan. The 3 who retired Senior Chief Paul Anderson, living quietly in Montana with his wife and kids. Commander Sarah Blake, teaching at the Naval Academy under a different name. And Master Chief Thomas Chen Lisa's husband, who'd left the teams after her death and disappeared into civilian life. The 2 still active. She didn't know their current assignments, and she couldn't contact them. Ghost Unit 7 had been disbanded in 2013 after the Kandahar ambush. The survivors had scattered their service records, sealed, their identities protected. They'd agreed to maintain silence unless recalled by proper authority. For 12 years, Rachel had kept that promise. She'd built a new life as an EMT, helping people in ways that didn't require security clearances or classified briefings. She'd attended therapy for PTSD, learned to manage the nightmares and flashbacks, found a fragile peace in routine and service. And now, because of one memorial service and a group of drunk SEALs, that peace was shattered. Her phone buzzed. A text from Dr. Patricia Chen, her therapist, just heard. "Are you okay? Call when you can." Rachel stared at the message. Dr. Chen knew her history. Patient confidentiality had protected Rachel's secrets, even when the psychiatrist's daughter Maya was struggling through SEAL training and facing the same discrimination Rachel had endured years earlier. It must have killed Dr. Chen to watch Rachel's arrest, knowing the truth but unable to speak. She typed a response, "I'm okay. Safe location. We'll call tomorrow." Another buzz, this one from Maya. "Chen, holy crap, Rachel. You're a legend. Morrison's an idiot. Mom says you're okay, but I wanted to check. Also, thank you for what you said about treating female operators with respect. I needed to hear that someone who's been through it thinks I can make it." Rachel's throat tightened. She responded, "You can make it. You will make it. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise." And Maya, being an operator isn't about being the strongest or the fastest. It's about being the person your teammates can trust when everything goes wrong. Focus on that. The response came quickly. "Yes, ma'am. Get some rest. You've earned it." Rachel set the phone aside and finally closed her eyes. This time, sleep came deep and dreamless, the sleep of someone who'd carried a heavy burden for too long and finally set it down, even if just temporarily. She woke to afternoon sun streaming through the windows and the smell of fresh coffee. Sitting up, she found Hayes in the kitchen, 2 mugs on the counter, a folder of documents beside them. "You look better," he said, sliding a mug toward her. "Almost human." Rachel accepted the coffee gratefully. "What time is it?" 1400 hours. You slept 11 hours straight. Doctor said you needed rest. Apparently you listened." He opened the folder. "We need to talk about next steps." Over the next hour, Hayes laid out the situation. Morrison's video had indeed gone viral, accumulating over 3 million views before NCIS forced it to be taken down. But the damage was done. Screenshots circulated. Reddit threads dissected every frame. Military blogs debated whether the arrest was legitimate or a cover-up. "The good news," Hayes said, "is that Public Affairs released our statement 6 hours ago. Most mainstream media are reporting it as a case of mistaken identity. Overzealous SEALs accused a legitimate veteran, charges were dropped, everyone apologized. The story's already losing steam. And the bad news? The bad news is that you're now a minor celebrity in certain corners of the internet. Veterans forums are trying to identify you. Social media sleuths are digging into your background. So far, they're hitting walls your classified status is holding. But it's only a matter of time before someone with the right connections starts asking the right questions." Rachel sipped her coffee. "What do you recommend?" "I recommend you accept my offer. Join the SEAL Training Advisory Board as a civilian consultant. We'll create a new cover identity completely legitimate that explains your expertise without revealing Ghost Unit 7. You'll mentor female candidates, review training protocols, provide insight on integration challenges. It's important work, Rachel. Work that matters. And it keeps me inside the system where you can protect me." "That too," Hayes admitted. "But I'm not asking you to do this just for protective reasons. I'm asking because you're uniquely qualified. You understand what these women are facing because you faced it yourself. You understand the psychological toll of operating in a male-dominated environment while carrying classified status that prevents you from defending yourself. You understand sacrifice in ways most people never will." Rachel set down her mug. "General, I left that life behind for a reason. The nightmares, the hypervigilance, the constant weight of secrets. I've spent 12 years learning to be normal, to have relationships that aren't built on lies, to sleep through the night without waking up in combat mode. If I come back into the community even as a civilian consultant, I risk losing all that progress." "I know what I'm asking," Hayes said quietly, "and I won't pressure you. But consider this. Maya Chen is struggling. She's one of 3 women currently in Bud's training. The other two are considering dropping out because of the discrimination. They need someone who's been there, who understands, who can tell them it's possible. Not because of some abstract principle, but because they're looking at living proof. Using me as inspiration is dangerous. What happens when they find out I can't tell them about most of my service, when they realize I'm a ghost, even within the community? Rachel Porter made the right call, and the decision she's about to face will define not just her future, but the future of countless women following in her footsteps. The story is about to take an unexpected turn that will leave everyone speechless. Before we continue, if you're enjoying this journey of revelation and respect earned through sacrifice, show your support by hitting the like button. Your engagement helps us share more stories about heroes who serve without seeking recognition. Stay with us, the confrontation is intensifying. Hayes leaned back in his chair. Then we tell them a version of the truth. That you served in a classified capacity you still can't discuss. That you earned your place through actions that remain sealed. That your service record will never be public, but your commitment to excellence and your dedication to the mission speak for themselves. Maya doesn't need to know about Neptune's Spear or Ghost Unit 7. She needs to know that someone who looks like her, who faced the same obstacles, made it through, and came out the other side still standing. Rachel stared into her coffee, watching the dark surface ripple with each breath she took. I'll think about it. That's all I ask. Hayes stood. There's one more thing. We've received a request from 60 Minutes. They want to do a piece on women in special operations, and they specifically want to interview you. Absolutely not. I told them you'd say that. But their producer made a compelling argument. If we control the narrative now, tell your story. On our terms, we prevent others from speculating and potentially stumbling onto classified information. A sanitized interview, pre-approved questions, nothing that compromises security. Just enough to satisfy public curiosity and shut down the conspiracy theories. And turn me into a public figure, which is the last thing I want. It's a risk, Hayes conceded. But so is staying silent and letting others define who you are. Either way, you're already in the spotlight. The question is whether you want any control over what that light reveals. Rachel shook her head. I need more time to decide. You have 48 hours. After that, the media will move on to the next story, and the opportunity closes. He collected his folder. I'll be back tomorrow morning. In the meantime, NCIS will maintain perimeter security. You're safe here. Try to relax. After Hayes left, Rachel poured herself another coffee and wandered into the living room. The safe house had been furnished with careful anonymity, neutral colors, generic artwork furniture that could belong to anyone. But someone had left a few books on the shelves, and Rachel found herself drawn to them. One caught her eye, The Things They Carried by Tim O'Brien. She pulled it out, settled onto the couch, and began reading. The stories of Vietnam soldiers carrying physical and emotional weight resonated in ways that made her chest ache. O'Brien understood. He'd been there. He knew what it meant to carry things that couldn't be put down. Her phone buzzed again. This time, an unknown number. She almost didn't answer, but something made her pick up. Rachel Porter. A woman's voice, professional but warm. Who's asking? My name is Catherine Rodriguez. I'm David Rodriguez's sister. I got your number from General Hayes. I hope you don't mind. I wanted to thank you. Rachel's breath caught. David Rodriguez, Ghost Unit 7, killed in Yemen in 2012. Ma'am, I'm not sure what you mean. General Hayes told me what happened last night, about Morrison and the arrest, about you being revealed as Ghost Unit 7. My family has always known David was part of something classified. We never knew details, never asked. But after last night, Hayes called me personally. He said I could know that my brother served with you, that you were teammates, that you were there when it happened. Rachel closed her eyes. Ma'am, please call me Catherine, and please let me say this. For 15 years, my family has mourned David without understanding what he died for. We knew it was important, knew it mattered, but we had no details, no context, nothing to hold on to except the flag they gave us and the empty words about his sacrifice. Last night, General Hayes told me that David saved your life in Fallujah, that he put himself between you and an IED, that his last words were, "Get her out." Tears streamed down Rachel's face. She remembered. God, she remembered. The explosion, David's body shielding hers from the worst of the blast, his blood soaking into the sand, the desperate scramble to evacuate while under fire. He was a hero, Rachel managed, the best of us. And now I know he died protecting someone worth protecting, someone who went on to save others, to serve with honor, to carry his memory forward. That means everything to my family. Everything. Catherine's voice cracked. So thank you, Rachel. Thank you for surviving. Thank you for honoring his sacrifice by continuing to serve. Thank you for being worth saving. They talked for another 20 minutes. Catherine shared stories about David as a child, his dreams of military service, his dedication to his teammates. Rachel shared what she could, sanitized versions of their time together, the jokes David told, before missions, his terrible singing voice, the way he'd always carried extra medical supplies because he worried about his team. When they finally hung up, Rachel sat in the silent cottage and cried for the first time since Kandahar. Cried for David, for Webb, for Lisa and Marcus and James and all the others who didn't make it home. Cried for the 12 years she'd carried their memories alone, unable to share them, unable to properly grieve, because grief required acknowledgement, and acknowledgement required revealing secrets she'd sworn to keep. The next morning, Hayes returned with news. We've had developments. Morrison's disciplinary board convened yesterday. He's being discharged from the Navy other than honorable conditions. Cortez is receiving a letter of reprimand and reassignment. Ross is suspended for 6 months with mandatory sensitivity training. Vasquez's resignation was accepted. Stokes is being transferred to a desk job in Norfolk. Rachel absorbed this. That's harsh for Morrison. His career is over. He assaulted a superior officer, falsely accused a veteran of federal crimes, and created a public relations nightmare. The board considered those aggravating factors. Plus, his service record showed a pattern of discrimination complaints that were never formally addressed. Last night was the culmination, not an isolated incident. What about the others who were there? The witnesses. Most are facing non-judicial punishment, letter of counseling, extra duty, that sort of thing. Master Chief Sullivan and Sergeant Torres are being commended for their attempts to de-escalate. Commander Hodges is implementing new training protocols about stolen valor accusations, verification before arrest, respect for all service members regardless of appearance or gender. Hayes pulled out another folder. Now, about the 60 Minutes interview. They've agreed to our terms, pre-approved questions, nothing classified. You get final review of the footage before it airs. The interview would be conducted next week, broadcast in 2 weeks. It's a chance to control your story. We're approaching the moment that will change everything in that room. The truth is about to surface in a way no one anticipated. If this story has kept you engaged, take a moment to share it with someone who values stories about integrity and earned respect. The climax is coming, and trust us, you don't want to miss what happens when a general walks into that room. Rachel had spent the night thinking about this exact decision, about visibility versus anonymity, about the women who needed proof that it was possible, about the responsibility that came with being a symbol. I'll do the interview, she said, on one condition. I want Maya Chen and the other female Bud S candidates there, off camera. I want them to hear directly from me what it takes, what it costs, and what it's worth. Hayes smiled. Done. I'll set it up. The interview took place in a secure conference room at Naval Base Coronado exactly 1 week after Rachel's arrest. The 60 Minutes producer, a sharp woman named Jennifer Walsh, had done her homework. She knew exactly what questions to ask to get compelling answers without compromising classified information. Ms. Porter, last Friday night you were arrested for stolen valor, yet within 2 hours those charges were dropped and you were revealed to be a legitimate veteran. Can you walk us through what happened? Rachel, dressed in simple civilian clothes, but with her posture betraying years of military discipline, chose her words carefully. I attended a memorial service for a fallen service member. Some individuals at the venue made assumptions about my background based on my appearance. Those assumptions led to accusations that I was impersonating a military officer. Once proper authorities verified my service record, the misunderstanding was resolved. But it wasn't just a misunderstanding, was it? You were handcuffed, interrogated, threatened with federal charges. How did that feel? Frustrating. But I understood their perspective. Stolen valor is a real problem that dishonors legitimate veterans. These individuals thought they were protecting the integrity of military service. They were wrong about me. but their motivation wasn't entirely unjustified. You're being very diplomatic about people who humiliated you publicly. Anger doesn't serve anyone. What serves is learning from the incident and ensuring it doesn't happen again. The Navy has already implemented new protocols. That's progress. Walsh leaned forward. General Hayes confirmed you served in a classified capacity from 2009 to 2013. Can you tell us anything about that service? I can tell you I served with honor, that I'm proud of my teammates and the work we did, that some of those teammates didn't make it home and their families deserve recognition even if the operations remain classified. Beyond that, my service details remain protected by executive order and national security protocols. Were you involved in any operations the public would recognize? I cannot confirm or deny involvement in specific operations. But you were part of the team that I cannot confirm or deny. Walsh changed tactics. What do you want people to understand about women in special operations? Rachel paused, choosing her words with care. I want people to understand that gender doesn't determine capability, that the women currently going through SEAL training aren't asking for special treatment or lowered standards. They're asking for the same opportunity to prove themselves that their male counterparts receive. They're asking to be judged on performance, not prejudice. And they're asking that when they succeed, because some of them will succeed, they be recognized as operators first and women second. What would you say to young women considering special operations careers? I'd say it's harder than you imagine. The physical demands are brutal. The psychological stress is overwhelming. You'll face discrimination, doubt, and obstacles your male peers won't encounter. You'll work twice as hard for half the recognition. And even when you succeed, some people will never accept it. Rachel paused, but I'd also say it's worth it. Because the women who make it through don't just earn a place for themselves. They open doors for everyone who comes after. They prove that excellence has no gender. And they become part of a brotherhood that, despite the name, is ultimately about shared sacrifice, mutual trust, and dedication to something larger than yourself. The interview continued for 90 minutes. Walsh asked about PTSD, about transitioning to civilian life, about the challenges of carrying classified service history. Rachel answered honestly but carefully, revealing enough to be relatable while protecting operational security. When it was over, Walsh shook her hand. That was powerful. Thank you for trusting us with your story. After the cameras were packed away, 3 young women entered the conference room. Maya Chen, along with petty officers Ashley Grant and Kimberly Martinez, the 3 women currently in Bud S first phase. They looked exhausted, bruised, and determined. Ma'am, Maya said, thank you for agreeing to meet with us. Rachel gestured to the chairs. Sit, and stop calling me ma'am. I work for a living. The old enlisted joke broke the ice slightly. For the next 2 hours, Rachel talked with them about the reality of special operations, about managing physical pain, about handling discrimination, without letting it derail training, about the importance of teamwork over individual heroics. She shared sanitized stories from her own experience, emphasizing the lessons without revealing classified details. Here's what nobody tells you, Rachel said. The worst part isn't the physical training. Bodies adapt. The worst part isn't even the discrimination, though that's brutal. The worst part is the isolation. You're going to be alone in ways your male classmates never experience. They have each other, dozens of guys going through the same hell-building bonds, sharing the suffering. You have each other, and maybe a handful of instructors who actually support integration. Everyone else will be waiting for you to fail. How do we deal with that? Ashley asked. By being so undeniably competent that they can't ignore you. By making yourself invaluable to your boat crew, by being the person they want next to them when everything goes wrong, and by supporting each other. Because you're not competing against each other, you're competing against the standard. If all 3 of you make it through, that's a victory. If only one of you makes it, that's still a victory. The point isn't to be the best woman, it's to be the best operator you can be, regardless of gender. Kimberly spoke up. Do you ever regret it? The service, the sacrifices? Rachel considered the question. I regret that some of my teammates didn't make it home. I regret that families lost people they loved. I regret that some operations required choices with no good options. But do I regret serving? No, I did work that mattered. I protected people who couldn't protect themselves. I was part of something larger than myself. That's not something I can regret. Even after last Friday, Maya asked. Even after being arrested and humiliated. Especially after last Friday, Rachel said firmly. Because last Friday proved that the system, despite its flaws, ultimately works. Yes, I was wrongly accused. Yes, I suffered injustice. But within hours, proper authority intervened. The accusers faced consequences. The system corrected itself. That's not a failure, that's exactly how it's supposed to work. Imperfectly, messily, but ultimately justly. Before they left, Rachel pulled Maya aside. Your mother is proud of you. She can't tell you directly because of her professional obligations, but she's proud. And so am I. Maya's eyes glistened. I won't let you down. You can't let me down. The only person you can let down is yourself. So don't quit. Even when everything in you is screaming to quit, don't. Because on the other side of that, pain is something very few people ever experience the knowledge that you're capable of more than you imagined. 3 weeks later, the 60 Minutes interview aired. 20 million people watched Rachel Porter's story, saw her quiet dignity, heard her careful answers about classified service. Social media exploded with support. Veterans organizations praised her grace under pressure. Even Morrison issued a public apology, acknowledging his error and committing to be better. The viral video of her arrest was now contextualized. The woman being handcuffed wasn't a fraud, but a legitimate veteran facing unjust accusations. The narrative shifted from stolen valor exposed to veteran vindicated. Rachel became briefly a symbol of women in combat, of classified service, of grace under fire. And then, as Hayes predicted, the media moved on. The next crisis, the next scandal, the next viral moment. Rachel's 15 minutes of fame ended and she returned to relative anonymity. But the impact remained. 2 months after the incident, all 3 women in Maya's Bude S-class graduated first phase, the first time in history that multiple women had made it through that crucial stage. 6 months later, Maya Chen earned her SEAL Trident, becoming one of the first women to do so. Rachel attended the ceremony standing in the back, watching with quiet pride as a new generation of operators earned their place. Hayes stood beside her, also watching. You made this possible, he said quietly. No, Rachel corrected. They made it possible. I just showed them it could be done. Will you reconsider the advisory board position? Rachel smiled. I already accepted it. Started last week. Civilian consultant part-time, strictly advisory. No operational involvement. Hayes raised an eyebrow. You didn't tell me. You're not the only one who can keep secrets, General. As they watched the new SEALs celebrate, Rachel felt her phone vibrate. A text from an unknown number? The package has been delivered. 48 hours to respond. Ghost 7. She stared at the message, her blood running cold. Ghost 7, the recall code, the one they had agreed would only be used for genuine emergencies, requiring the unit's unique capabilities. Hayes noticed her expression. What's wrong? Rachel showed him the phone. His face hardened. When did this arrive? Just now. Do you know who sent it? Only 3 people have that code. One of them just used it. She looked at Hayes. My watch isn't done, is it? Rachel, you're retired. Medical discharge. You don't have to respond. 12 operators, General. That's what the message implies. 12 people in danger who need someone who doesn't officially exist. She met his eyes. When has need to know ever stopped mattering? Just because I left active service. What happened in that officers' club that night became a lesson that echoed throughout Naval Special Warfare Command. If you want to see more stories about operators whose service remains classified, whose sacrifices go unrecognized until one pivotal moment, check out our playlist in the description. The next video features another hidden hero whose identity shocked an entire military base. Click now to continue the journey. Hayes' expression was troubled. If you do this, you're walking away from the peace you've built. The therapy progress, the civilian life, the normalcy you fought so hard to achieve. I know. And if it goes wrong, there's no cavalry coming. Ghost Unit 7 officially doesn't exist. We can't acknowledge, you can't support. You can't extract you if things go bad. I know that too. Then why would you even consider it? Rachel looked back at the celebration at Maya Chen and the other new operators laughing and taking photos at the future they represented. Because someone has to. Because 12 people are counting on someone who can do what others can't. Because that's what operators do. We answer when others can't. Hayes was quiet for a long moment. What do you need? Access to classified briefing materials? Whatever intel exists on the situation. 24 hours to assess whether it's actually viable or a suicide mission. She paused. And your word that if I don't come back, someone will tell Catherine Rodriguez and the other families what happened, not the details, just that it mattered. You have my word. Hayes pulled out his phone. I'll have the briefing materials delivered to the safe house within 3 hours. But Rachel, you don't have to do this. You've given enough. Have I? Rachel asked quietly. Because David Rodriguez gave his life to save mine. Webb held on for 12 years before PTSD took him. 4 of our teammates never came home. If I can honor their sacrifice by saving 12 more operators, how is that even a choice? As the celebration continued around them, Rachel Porter, Ghost Unit 7, Operation, Neptune, Spear, the woman who'd endured arrest and accusation with silent grace, made her decision. Not because she wanted to return to the shadows, not because she craved the adrenaline or missed the missions, but because some debts can only be repaid in the same currency they were incurred, sacrifice for sacrifice, service for service, life for life. 3 days later, Rachel Porter disappeared again. Her apartment stood empty. Her EMT supervisor received a resignation email. Her therapist got a brief message thanking her for everything and explaining that new assignments required relocating. Only Hayes knew where she'd gone. Only he knew about the 12 operators trapped behind enemy lines in a location that couldn't be officially acknowledged. Only he knew about the Ghost Protocol activation, the 48-hour planning window, the high-altitude insertion into denied territory. And only he knew that 3 weeks later, 13 people walked across a border into friendly territory, 12 exhausted operators and 1 woman who'd proved once again that the deadliest warriors are often the ones nobody expects. When Hayes met her at the debrief location, Rachel looked older, harder, carrying new scars, both visible and invisible. But she was alive. 12 for 12, she reported. Complete success. 0 casualties. Welcome back, operator, Hayes said quietly. Not back, sir. Just not done yet. She looked at him with eyes that had seen too much but refused to look away. Maybe the watch never really ends. Maybe for people like us, like Ghost Unit 7, there's always one more mission, one more person to save, one more debt to honor. And when it finally breaks you, Rachel smiled tiredly, then I'll know I gave everything I had. And isn't that what operators do? 6 months later, Rachel Porter appeared at another SEAL graduation ceremony. She stood in the back again, watching new operators earn their tridents, wondering which of them would answer the call when their own Ghost Protocol activated, wondering which of them would understand that service isn't about glory or recognition. It's about showing up when needed, doing what others can't, and carrying the weight, so others don't have to. The true warriors she'd learned aren't the ones who seek the fight. They're the ones who answer when called, who serve in silence, who carry secrets that can never be told and burdens that can never be shared. They're the ghosts in the machine, the operators in the shadows, the ones who exist in classified files and sealed records, their sacrifices, known only to a handful of people with the right clearances and need to know. And Rachel Porter, standing in that crowd wearing civilian clothes and carrying memories that would never make it into history books, was proud to be one of them, because some stories aren't meant to be told, some heroes aren't meant to be recognized, some service happens in shadows so deep that light never penetrates, but it matters. God, it matters. And that Rachel thought, as she watched the new operators celebrate, was enough. That had to be enough. Because for operators like her, for Ghost Unit 7, for all the warriors who served in silence and answered calls that officially never happened, there was no other choice. The watch continued. And somewhere in a secure facility with clearances above the highest classifications, another phone would eventually buzz with another message, Ghost 7, package delivery required, and somewhere someone would answer, because that's what operators do. Always.